Captain Ryland's shuttle cut through the violet clouds of Lyra 9 like a silver arrow. Below, the planet stretched in a wild tapestry of crystalline forests and jagged mountains that glittered under the twin suns. The team had been warned. Lyra 9 was unpredictable, its weather patterns as sharp as its landscape. But warnings never shook Ryland. Curiosity had always been stronger than caution. He glanced at the team gathered in the shuttle cabin. Mara, the xenobiologist, scanned her instruments nervously. Sensors show life forms, not just microbes, large, mobile creatures, something intelligent. Ryland nodded, though unease prickled at the edges of his mind. He had led many exploratory missions, but there was always that unspoken fear when humans met a completely unknown species. Their instincts whispered caution, and experience reminded him that instincts were sometimes more accurate than theory. The landing was smooth. Lyra 9's surface shimmered beneath the shuttle's hull as though the ground itself were alive. Crystalline trees bent and twinkled in the wind, casting fractured patterns of light across the ground. Ryland felt a thrill. It was beautiful, alien, almost sacred. They set up the camp near a grove where the crystals grew tallest. The team moved efficiently, erecting tents and activating their scanning equipment. Within minutes, sensors began picking up movement, something swift, small, and careful. "Look at that," whispered Mara. On the edge of the crystal grove, a blur of silver fur vanished into the trees. The shape had been quick, almost like a reflection, but the pair of amber eyes that had glinted at them before it disappeared left an imprint in their minds. "Could be a predator," muttered Ryland. His voice carried a weight of authority, though he admitted the concern in his own mind. He had been here before, and instinct had always saved him. Something about those eyes told him to watch carefully. For the next few days, the team noticed subtle signs of the creature's presence. Tools left outside the tents would be moved slightly. Small supplies would vanish and reappear days later in strange arrangements. Ryland began to believe the Vulpine, the creature they had named for its fox-like agility, was stalking them, testing their reactions, even threatening them. The tension in the camp rose steadily. Every sound of cracking crystal or shifting leaves triggered a ripple of fear. Ryland took late-night patrols, scanning the grove with his eyes and instruments, convinced that the Vulpine would strike. But it never did. There was no attack, no threat beyond observation. It was clever, cautious, and deliberate, but never violent. One night, curiosity overcame caution. Ryland slipped quietly from the camp, his flashlight cutting a narrow beam through the crystalline forest. Every step was careful, every sound amplified in the still night. He had seen the Vulpine before, but only fleetingly, enough to make his mind race with questions. He followed the faint, glowing tracks between the tall crystal trees. The light of the twin moons reflected off the crystalline surfaces, creating dancing patterns that made it difficult to focus. Then he saw it. The Vulpine moved gracefully through a small clearing, its silver fur almost blending with the luminous ground. It was carrying something delicate, shimmering plants that seemed to glow softly in its paws. Ryland froze. The creature was not hunting. It was arranging the plants around a shallow pit. Its movements were careful, deliberate, almost reverent. For a moment he thought he had been wrong, that all his assumptions had been built on fear. Then he noticed the nest. Small, round, and glowing faintly, like tiny pearls resting in the pit. The Vulpine gently adjusted each one, protecting them from the crystalline wind that swept through the grove. Ryland's heart raced with realization. The creature they had feared, assumed to be hunting, was a guardian, a protector. The Vulpine had been watched over its young, its family, its future. It had never been a threat to the humans. He backed away quietly, careful not to disturb the scene. In his mind, a new understanding began to form. Humans often judged what they did not understand as danger. They assumed the unknown was a threat. But here, on Lyra 9, the unknown was simply life. Back at the camp, Rylan observed his team. They were still tense, still preparing for an attack that would never come. He realized that part of being human was fear, and part of exploration was learning to see beyond fear. The following day, Rylan returned to the grove at dawn, careful to keep a respectful distance. The Vulpine appeared again, carrying more glowing plants. It did not flee or hide. It worked with patience and intelligence, rearranging its protective circle around the nest. Rylan began taking careful notes, observing patterns. The Vulpine had a routine, a system. It was not random. Over several days, Rylan and his team began to see the creature differently. They noticed how it communicated with subtle gestures, how it reacted to environmental changes, and how it solved problems. When a strong wind threatened the nest, the Vulpine quickly adjusted the plants to shield the eggs. When a crystal shard fell dangerously close, it moved it with precise care. It was intelligent, thoughtful, and capable of complex reasoning. Rylan found himself fascinated. The fear that had gripped him faded, replaced by admiration. He realized that the Vulpine, in its own way, was a mirror of human ingenuity. It faced challenges, adapted, and protected what mattered. One evening, Rylan watched the Vulpine from a distance. It paused near the edge of the grove, ears twitching, eyes alert. It had noticed him but did not run. Instead, it tilted its head, as if studying him, understanding him in the way humans understood other humans through body language and expression. Rylan smiled quietly. He extended a hand, not expecting the Vulpine to respond, but as a gesture of respect. Slowly, the creature inched closer, sniffing the air between them, observing the human without hostility. Rylan realized then that this was not a predator-human interaction. This was an opportunity for trust, a chance to learn from one another. The days passed. The team began leaving small gifts of food and carefully placed objects near the grove, signaling they meant no harm. The Vulpine accepted these offerings, sometimes leaving a plant or arranging stones in response. A silent, mutual understanding grew between them. Rylan reflected on human nature. They often feared what they could not understand, but sometimes courage was simply seeing beyond fear. They had assumed the Vulpine was a hunter, a threat to their safety. Instead, it was a guardian, a creature driven by love and responsibility. As the twin suns began to set, painting the crystal forest in shades of gold and violet, Rylan felt a quiet pride. Humanity had survived countless challenges by understanding, adapting, and respecting life, even the life that seemed alien at first. And on Lyra 9, they had found not only another intelligent being, but a reminder that fear could blind them to the truth. Rylan sat by the edge of the grove, watching the Vulpine settle over its nest. He understood now that the greatest lessons of exploration were not in conquest, but in observation, patience, and empathy. Lyra 9 had shown them that humans could rise above fear, that curiosity and intelligence were their true strengths. The Vulpine was not a hunter seeking prey. It was a teacher, guiding them toward understanding without words. And as the night settled over the crystalline forest, Rylan knew this was only the beginning. The bond they were forming with the Vulpine would change the way humans saw the galaxy, one step at a time. One cautious but brave interaction at a time. The dawn on Lyra 9 came with a calm clarity, the twin suns rising slowly over the jagged crystalline forests. Captain Rylan watched from the edge of the camp as the light fractured into millions of tiny reflections across the shimmering terrain. The Vulpine moved gracefully among the trees, alert but composed, as though it were aware of the humans yet did not consider them a threat. Rylan had spent the past week studying the creature, learning to see the patterns in its behavior, the rhythm of its life. The initial fear had faded, replaced by fascination and a quiet sense of respect. The Vulpine's intelligence was striking, but what impressed him most was its patience. Every action seemed intentional, every movement deliberate, as if it understood consequences and could plan ahead. That morning, Rylan gathered his team. Mara, the xenobiologist, had already begun compiling detailed notes on the Vulpine's habits. She looked up from her tablet, eyes wide. "It's remarkable," she said. "It isn't just intelligent, it's problem-solving. Look at how it reinforces its nest when the wind picks up." "That requires foresight," Rylan nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "We have to respect its space, but there's more we can learn, more we can do to understand it without interference." The team decided to observe the Vulpine from a safe distance, leaving small offerings of food and lightweight tools. The creature accepted these gifts cautiously at first, then began to respond in subtle ways. It rearranged stones near the human camp to signal certain patterns, nudged objects to indicate directions, and even led the team's attention to areas of interest within the forest. One afternoon, the sky darkened unexpectedly. Crystalline clouds thickened over the horizon and a low hum vibrated through the air. The wind picked up, sharp and unpredictable, shaking the forest violently. The humans knew a storm was coming, but its strength and speed surprised them. Rylan watched as the Vulpine moved with precision. It darted between trees, collecting fragile branches and luminous plants, reinforcing its nest against the storm. Its movements were swift, calculated, and calm. Rylan realized that the creature's intelligence extended to survival strategy. It had learned to anticipate natural hazards and act accordingly. The team followed cautiously, trying to help without disrupting. They reinforced the crystal grove with temporary shields, using their equipment to secure fragile plant structures. The Vulpine paused, watching them for a moment, then continued its work, signaling approval in subtle gestures. As the storm hit, the forest trembled, but the combined efforts of humans and Vulpine protected the fragile nest. After the storm passed, Rylan and Mara examined the area. The eggs had survived, and the grove was intact. The Vulpine approached the humans and, in a moment of unexpected trust, allowed Rylan to lay a small protective covering over the nest. "It's communicating," Mara whispered. "Not in words, but it understands intention." Rylan nodded, feeling a profound respect. Humans often relied on tools, technology, and brute force, but here, cooperation and understanding had achieved what strength alone could not. Over the next few days, the relationship between the humans and the Vulpine deepened. They began to anticipate each other's actions. The Vulpine led them to areas of the forest where resources could be found, where water pooled safely, and where rare plants grew. In return, humans provided knowledge, small innovations, and careful protection. One evening, while the twin suns set in a blaze of amber and violet, Rylan noticed the Vulpine paused at the edge of a crystal cliff, looking out over a vast valley. He approached slowly, remembering the lessons of patience and observation. The creature did not flee. Instead, it tilted its head, as if inviting him to see what it saw. The valley below was alive with movement. Small bioluminescent creatures floated along the air currents, while larger animals grazed among the crystal formations. Rylan realized the Vulpine had brought them here intentionally, showing them the richness of its world. It was teaching, guiding, and sharing, without words but with clarity. In that moment, Rylan felt a deep connection, not just to the Vulpine but to the larger truth of human exploration. It was not about domination or conquest. It was about understanding, respect, and the courage to see beyond fear. Humanity had survived by learning, by adapting, by cooperating. And here, on Lyra 9, they had a chance to embody those lessons in real time. A week later, the humans noticed another development. The eggs the Vulpine had been protecting began to hatch. Tiny creatures emerged, their shells glowing softly under the twin suns. The Vulpine's behavior shifted subtly. It became more protective, yet it allowed the humans to observe, even to assist with minor tasks that could ensure the young one's safety. Rylan marveled at the intelligence displayed. The Vulpine seemed to understand that the humans were allies, that their intentions were benevolent. It demonstrated teaching behavior, showing how to forage safely, how to navigate the crystalline terrain, and how to avoid natural hazards. Humans, in turn, adapted quickly, learning the principles of survival from a species entirely different from their own. The bond strengthened further when the humans discovered a previously hidden cavern rich in rare minerals. The Vulpine had led them here, seemingly aware that these resources could aid human study without disturbing the ecosystem. Together, humans and Vulpine documented and collected samples carefully, ensuring that the natural balance remained intact. Rylan reflected on the broader significance. Humans had always prided themselves on ingenuity and courage, often rising to challenges by combining intellect with persistence. Here, those traits had allowed them to form a connection with a completely alien intelligence. And yet, it was the Vulpine's own intelligence, its foresight and empathy that had made the cooperation meaningful. One evening, as the twin suns set, casting elongated shadows across the crystalline forest, Rylan sat near the Vulpine and its young. The creature approached without hesitation, brushing a paw gently against his hand. It was a gesture of trust, of acceptance, and of recognition. Rylan understood the weight of the moment. Humanity had assumed fear, but the truth was far more powerful. The night deepened, and the forest came alive with soft luminescent lights. The humans and the Vulpine shared the space peacefully. Rylan thought about all the times humans had misjudged alien life, all the assumptions that had led to conflict or missed opportunity. On Lyra 9, they had learned the opposite. They had observed, waited, and chosen understanding over fear. The Vulpine led the humans to a hidden spring, a place where the water glowed softly and rare plants thrived. They drank, replenished their supplies, and noted the surroundings. The creature watched them closely, teaching without words, guiding them with gestures and subtle signs. Rylan realized that the truest form of human triumph was not conquest, but the ability to adapt, to learn, and to build trust across differences. As the weeks passed, the humans began documenting everything: habits, communication patterns, and environmental adaptations. The Vulpine tolerated their presence, even engaging in playful interactions with the humans and their tools. Each day brought new understanding, new revelations about intelligence, resilience, and cooperation. A sudden discovery one morning reinforced the lesson. A small section of the forest showed signs of a previous hazard, a fallen crystal formation that had blocked a natural water flow. The Vulpine moved quickly, clearing the path with precise movements, demonstrating problem-solving that rivaled human engineering. Rylan and his team assisted minimally, observing the intelligence at work. "That's it," Mara whispered. "It's not just survival, it's planning, it's design, it's like watching a civilization in miniature." Rylan smiled, thinking of the countless worlds humans had explored, often seeing only danger and opportunity. Here, they had found a partner. They had discovered that intelligence and ingenuity could transcend species, that cooperation could be a bridge across the unknown. As the final week of their stay on Lyra 9 approached, Rylan prepared to report their findings. The Vulpine seemed to understand the impending departure. Its gestures grew deliberate, guiding them safely to the landing site, signaling the paths that would ensure both human and Vulpine safety during departure. On the day of takeoff, Rylan paused to look back at the crystalline grove. The Vulpine and its young watched from the edge of the trees. For a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had formed. Rylan reflected on everything they had learned. Fear had clouded their judgment at first. Assumptions had made the Vulpine seem like a threat, but patience, observation, and empathy had revealed the truth. The creature was not a hunter, it was a guardian, a teacher, and a partner. Humanity's strengths, curiosity, courage, and intelligence, had allowed them to connect across an impossible divide. The shuttle lifted, leaving the crystal forest shimmering under the twin suns. Rylan watched the Vulpine move among the trees one last time, a living symbol of what humans could achieve when they chose understanding over fear. As the shuttle accelerated toward orbit, he knew that this encounter would change the way humans approach the galaxy. There were lessons in trust, in intelligence, and in cooperation that went beyond any technology or weapon. Humans had triumphed not by dominating, but by seeing, understanding, and respecting life that was entirely different from their own. And on Lyra 9, beneath the glow of twin suns and crystalline forests, humans had discovered that sometimes the most extraordinary victories came not from strength, but from empathy, patience, and the courage to believe that what seemed dangerous might actually be the greatest teacher of all.